Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to take these really complex, thorny topics, legislative, ethical, you name it, and, well, we tear them apart. We use the specialized research to get to the core of the why.
And today's why is a big one.
It really is.
Yeah.
Today we are tackling, I think, one of the most profound paradoxes in the entire Islamic legal structure. We're talking about the regulation of divorce, or talaq.
It's a true tightrope walk.
Yeah.
You've got this ideal on one side, the sacred forever bond of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other, you have the messy human reality of incompatibility. The law has to somehow manage both of those truths at the same time.
And the whole conflict, the whole paradox, is just perfectly captured in this single, incredibly powerful phrase from the Prophet Muhammad.
Yeah, it's a key to everything.
He described divorce as abgat al-halal ilah, the most detested permissible act to God.
And that's really what we're here to unpack. Just think about that for a second, you, the listener. How can something be intensely disliked by God, subject to, divine aversion, and yet still be completely permissible, still be halal? This isn't just like a minor detail. It's the absolute core of the legislative wisdom, the hukam, that governs the entire family unit in Islam.
So that's our mission today. We are going deep into the scholarly analysis of that apparent contradiction. We're using sources, primary sources, the Quran, the Sunnah, and we're looking at the ultimate goals of the Sharia, the Maqasid, to explain how this bitter option is still left on the table.
We're going to spend a good amount of time first on what detested permissibility even means. What's the legal architecture there?
Yeah.
Then we'll get into the core reasons why it's allowed in the first place, the mercy, the realism. And finally, we'll look at all the legal guardrails, the safety barriers that are put in place that really prove how much the law dislikes the action, even while it allows it.
Okay, let's do it. Let's start with that foundation. What does it actually mean to be a detested permissibility?
Well, the first thing we have to establish is that the Quran itself sets the stage. It makes divorce a legal reality. It's not something that was ignored. It's meticulously regulated.
Right. You don't see the kind of prohibitive language that you see for, say, theft. Or eating pork. It's a different category of language entirely.
Exactly. It's language that controls and structures the process. The main verse that everyone goes back to is in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 229. It lays out the rules for ending a marriage. It says, "At-talaqu maratan fa'imsakun bimarufin aw tasrun baisana."
Divorce is twice. Then retention with kindness or release with excellence. That phrasing is so important, isn't it? It sets boundaries, but it also demands a high ethical standard, even in the act of separating by husn with excellence.
That's a moral command. So the verse confirms that it's permissible, ibaha, but it puts these heavy conditions on it. The right is there, but it has to be done with fairness, with kindness. But the full sort of emotional and moral weight comes from the hadith.
The one we started with.
Yeah, the one we started with. The most detested, permissible act to God is the divorce. Abgat al-hal.
So let's really get into that phrase, because the immediate question that comes to mind is, okay, if God detests it so much, why not just forbid it?
That's the million-dollar question.
Why not just make it haram?
The difference between tarim, which is prohibition, and bud, detestability, it's just fundamental to understanding the realism of the law. Tarim would remove all choice.
Yeah.
It would declare the act inherently evil in all circumstances, like murder.
Okay.
So if divorce were haram, it wouldn't matter how miserable, how abusive, how destructive a marriage was, the law would force you to endure it.
And that would completely go against one of the core principles of Sharia, which is removing hardship.
Precisely. Bug, on the other hand, is a moral label that you put on a choice that has to remain open for cases of necessity. It signals that even though it's legally available, doing it causes intense divine disapproval because of what you're dismantling.
So it's a deterrent, a really, really strong one.
It's a profound moral and social deterrent. It basically says, you can do this, but you need to understand the sacred weight of what you're about to break. Do not do this lightly. It puts the responsibility right on the person's conscience.
And the community's conscience, too.
Yes. And that is a much more sophisticated way to prevent something than just a blanket ban, which would probably lead to even worse outcomes. People just leaving, illicit separations, people trapped in horrible situations.
This brings us to that analogy the scholars always use, the medicine analogy. It really helps clarify this.
The medicine analogy is perfect for this. Divorce is like a bitter, detested medicine. It tastes awful. You would never, ever take it for fun.
Right.
But if you have a severe chronic disease that is actively destroying your body and your life, that bitter medicine becomes a necessity. You have to take it to survive.
And in this case, the disease is that deep, intractable marital conflict, the istikam al-khilaf.
Yes, the persistent poisoning conflict, when the marriage has become a source of sickness rather than health. In that case, failing to administer the detested medicine of divorce would cause a greater harm. The patient, the family, would just fall apart from the inside.
So it's the legalization of necessary pain.
That's a great way to put it. It's allowing a painful cure to prevent a certain death of the spirit.
And that leads us right into the Maqasid Sharia, the higher objectives. If it's this disliked, the reasons for allowing it must be incredibly strong.
They have to be.
And the sources say the number one reason is Rafa al-Haraj, removing hardship and harm.
This is the bedrock of the whole legal system. The law is supposed to bring ease, not difficulty. Marriage is meant to be a place of sakin tranquility, repose, and mawada, affection. That's the goal.
That's the ideal state.
Right, and the law will fight to protect that state. But when the marriage itself becomes the source of the exact opposite, when it becomes, as the scholars put it, an unbearable hell, then the law has to switch its priority. It has to protect the individuals from that unbearable burden. Forcing them to stay in that contract would violate the entire spirit of mercy.
It's like the contract has failed its primary purpose.
It has. And so divorce becomes the necessary act to lift that harm, to lift that terror.
And the source material connects this so beautifully to this idea of hope for the future. It quotes Surah An-Nisa, verse 130. But if they separate, God will enrich each spouse from his abundance.
That's such a powerful verse. And the key word there is his abundance, sati. It's a divine promise. It's saying that this separation, as painful as it is not a dead end.
It's not the end of your provision, of your happiness.
In fact, it suggests that maybe, just maybe, that true provision, that sati, only becomes available after you've been freed from the distress of the conflict. It gives you permission to imagine a better future for both people.
Which reframes divorce not as just a failure, but as a potential door to a new life. A mercy.
A mercy. And this ties right into something we talk about a lot today. Mental health. The law recognized this centuries ago. The constant daily endurance of a marriage filled with hatred and hostility. It's profoundly damaging.
We're talking about the silent damage, the things that build up over years.
Exactly. The chronic depression, the crippling anxiety. And the scholars also talk about al-Aldini's spiritual harm.
Spiritual harm. How so?
Well, think about it. If you are just consumed day in and day out with resentment, with anger, with maybe even hatred for the person you live with, how can you find the peace of mind required for worship, for your duties to God? The relationship itself becomes a barrier to your faith.
So in that light, divorce is almost like a psychological safety valve. Aman.
That's exactly the term they use. It's a safety valve. It rescues the mental and spiritual health of the people involved. The law is saying that the preservation of a person's sanity and their connection to God is more important than rigidly preserving a broken contract.
God doesn't want the marriage to be a prison for the soul.
No. The permissibility is an act of mercy. It ensures people aren't condemned to a lifetime of internal warfare.
This all flows into another core objective, which is just so pragmatic. Legislative realism. Mura at al-Tabiya al-Bashariya, acknowledging human nature.
The Islamic legal system is, at its heart, deeply realistic. It knows humans aren't perfect. It knows that love and compatibility aren't always guaranteed to last forever. People change.
It acknowledges that failure is just part of being human.
Yes. And sometimes you get a situation of tanifer, just a deep, deep incompatibility that no amount of counseling is ever going to fix. If the law were purely idealistic and demanded everyone stay married no matter what, it would be cruel. It would be unjust and completely impractical.
It would be burdening people with something they can't bear.
Exactly. So permitting divorce is the law's way of acknowledging human fallibility.
Which brings us to the final, really crucial argument, averting a greater corruption. Dar al-Mafsada al-Kubra.
This is the classic lesser of two evils argument. The idea is that once all attempts at reconciliation have failed, and we'll get to how exhaustive those attempts are, then forcing the marriage to continue is guaranteed to create a much bigger, more catastrophic corruption. Divorce, even though it's detested, prevents that bigger societal rot.
Okay, so let's get specific. What kind of greater corruption are we talking about? The source material mentions al-Arar al-Badani.
Physical harm. Domestic violence. If the conflict gets to a point where physical safety is at risk, where staying together means ongoing abuse, then divorce isn't just permitted, it's basically a moral necessity. The The law has to protect life and limb. That's a primary objective.
And then there's the spiritual harm again, Al-Arar al-Dini.
Right.
Yeah.
We touched on this, but it's when the hatred becomes so profound that it leads people into greater sins. Lying, cheating, backbiting, actively wishing evil on each other. It's a state of spiritual disease. Divorce separates them, giving each person a chance to heal and return to a state of peace.
And the last one, and maybe the most important for the future of society, is the harm to the children.
This is the one that has the longest lasting impact. The sources are very clear on this. Raising children in a home that is a permanent war zone causes severe, deep psychological damage. They model this destructive behavior. They live in a state of constant anxiety. The law recognizes that sometimes two separate, peaceful homes are far, far better for a child's development than one toxic, high-conflict home.
So the paradox is solved by necessity. God detests the outcome, the shattering of the sacred bond, but permits the act out of mercy and realism to prevent something even worse from happening.
That's it. It's the bitter medicine you have to take when the disease threatens the patient's entire life.
So if the law permits this, it can't just be a free-for-all. There has to be a framework of justice built into the process of dissolution itself. It has to protect everyone involved.
Absolutely. The exit door is there, but it's not wide open. It's locked with all these mechanisms to prevent it from being used frivolously or abusively.
Let's start with the rights of the man. Traditionally, he has the right of talaq. But how does the law control that right? So it isn't just a tool of power.
It's heavily restricted. The entire point of the regulations is to curb impulsive, reckless behavior, what the law calls alabath.
Can you give us an example of how it curbs that recklessness?
The classic example is the prohibition of the instantaneous triple divorce. Where a man in a fit of rage says, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you, all at once.
And that's it, irrevocably over.
In some historical practices, yes, but the dominant scholarly view, going back to the companions, saw this as a reprehensible innovation, a bid. They heavily restricted its legal effect. The whole point was to force the process to be gradual, one pronouncement at a time, with the waiting period in between.
So there's always time for reflection. You can't just end it in a single angry moment.
Exactly. The law is actively fighting against the right being used as a weapon of momentary spite. It's saying, you have this right, but you must use it slowly, deliberately, and with an escape route always visible.
Okay, so now let's flip to the rights of the woman. She isn't just a passive actor in this. The law gives her clear paths to get out of a bad marriage. Yurakwan lil-khala, routes to salvation.
That's right. There are two main pathways. The first is khul. This is a divorce that she initiates.
And when would she use khul?
Typically, it's used when the problem is a fundamental incompatibility coming from her side, and the husband hasn't necessarily done anything legally wrong to warrant a fault-based divorce. She simply cannot live with him anymore.
So what's the trade-off?
Because she's the one seeking to end the contract, she usually has to give back the dowry, the mar, that she received from him. In essence, she is legally purchasing her freedom. It ensures she's not trapped, but it also creates a financial consequence that discourages frivolous use.
And the second path is judicial divorce. This is for when there's demonstrable harm, right?
Correct. This is essential for justice. If the wife can go to a judge, a qadi, and prove that she's being harmed, whether that's physical abuse, financial neglect, abandonment, the judge can grant her a divorce. And critically, in this case, she usually does not have to give up her financial rights.
Because the fault lies with the husband.
Exactly. The dissolution is his fault for not upholding his end of the marital covenant. This ensures that a woman is never forced to stay in an abusive or neglectful marriage just because she's afraid of becoming destitute.
It's a very sophisticated balance. It puts the consequence on the person who is either causing the harm or initiating the separation without cause.
It creates accountability for both parties, but really all of these rules for the man, for the woman, they all ultimately come back to the most important stake, protecting the children.
Which is the question everyone has. How does allowing divorce ever protect children when it's inherently so painful for them?
Well, we have to go back to that lesser of two evils argument. The ideal is a stable, loving home, of course. But the law argues that forcing kids to grow up in a home that's a constant war zone, that is often the greater harm.
The toxic atmosphere is more damaging than the actual separation.
That's the argument. The constant fighting, the trauma, the emotional damage, it's devastating. So the law's goal shifts. It's not about keeping the family unit together at all costs. It's about facilitating an organized divorce.
Organized. What does that mean?
It means a divorce that immediately regulates custody, housing, and financial support, the nafaka. By creating a clear, structured separation, it aims to minimize the chaos and ongoing warfare, giving the child a chance to have peace and stability, even if it's in two separate homes.
So the law is prioritizing the child's well-being and peace over the rigid structure of the family unit.
That's the pivot. The well-being of the most vulnerable comes first.
We've spent a lot of time on the permissible part. Let's circle back now and really give the proper weight to the most detested part, the upgun. This isn't just a suggestion. It's a profound theological warning.
It is. It forces everyone to confront the immense cost of this action. And the first and biggest reason for that detestation is that divorce destroys a mithaq galis.
The solemn covenant. You mentioned this term is used for only two things in the Quran.
That's right. It's used to describe the covenant God took from his prophets
Wow.
and the marital bond. That comparison is deliberate. It's staggering. It elevates the marriage contract to a sacred, almost theological level.
It's not just a social contract.
Not at all. It's a covenant witnessed by God. So when a divorce happens, you are shattering that sacred foundation. And the law naturally detests the destruction of an institution it holds up as so incredibly sacred.
And given that weight, the ripple effects must be huge.
That's the second reason for the detestation. The consequences are never just limited to the couple. They ripple out. To the children, to the extended families, to the whole community. Divorce is seen as a destabilizing force in society, and the law registers that communal harm with the label abgat.
It weakens the very fabric of society.
Precisely. And that ties into the third reason. It stands in direct opposition to the whole purpose of marriage. The goal is permanence, stability, tranquility, sakan.
The verse in Surah Ar-Rum.
Exactly. Divorce is the antithesis of that. It's instability. It's distress. It's the destruction of that divinely intended peace. The law detests seeing its ideal outcome thwarted and replaced by conflict.
And finally, there's just the humbling admission of failure.
Yes. It's an acknowledgement that this blessed project, this thing that was supposed to be a source of virtue and continuity, has failed. And that failure, even if it was humanly necessary, warrants divine aversion. The detestation is a constant reminder of the ideal that was lost.
Okay, so if the law detests it this much, then the process of getting a divorce should be hard. It should be full of obstacles.
And it is. This is where you see the practical proof of the detestation. The system is filled with legal safety barriers designed to make it an absolute last resort.
They're designed to force reflection.
And reconciliation. It's a mandated slow-motion procedure.
So what's the first barrier?
The first is that the process is gradual. The first time a man pronounces divorce, it's a talaq raji, a revocable divorce.
Revocable.
Yeah.
Meaning it's not final.
Not at all. It means that during the waiting period, the husband can just take it back. He doesn't need a new marriage contract, a new dowry, nothing. He can just resume the marriage.
It's a built-in undo button.
It is. It's a legal cooling down period with a wide open back door. The law knows people say things in anger. This prevents that momentary anger from causing permanent destruction.
And that leads right to the waiting period itself, the Ida, usually about 3 months.
Right. And the Ida is not just a formality. Yes, it has a practical purpose, which is to make sure the woman isn't pregnant and to clarify paternity. But its main sociological function is to force a chance for reconciliation.
Because the woman is often required to stay in the marital home during this time?
She is. And that forced proximity, it's powerful. The anger can cool down. They see each other every day. They have to confront the reality of what they're losing. And very often that shared space leads to a desire to reconcile, which is legally very simple to do during the Ida.
The law is basically forcing them to sit with their decision for 3 months.
In close contact. It's the opposite of systems that encourage you to immediately separate and get lawyers. This system encourages you to stay close and reflect.
Okay, what's another barrier?
Mandatory witnessing. Wujub al-ishhad. The Quran in Surah At-Talaq says to take as witness 2 just persons from among you.
So you can't just do this in private.
No. It pulls the act out of the shadows. If you have to bring 2 respected members of your community into a room to formalize the destruction of your marriage, it adds a huge layer of gravity. It creates social accountability. You have to admit your failure publicly. That alone is a powerful deterrent.
The law also gets very specific about when you can even initiate a divorce.
Yes, another check on human impulse. A man is forbidden from divorcing his wife during her menstrual cycle or during a period of purity where they've been intimate.
Why those specific times?
It's all about ensuring the decision is made with a clear head. Not during a time of heightened emotional stress or physical discomfort for her, and not right after intimacy, which could be seen as a form of punishment or emotional manipulation. The law demands deliberation, not reaction.
And finally, the biggest institutional barrier, the one that comes before a final divorce can even be considered: arbitration.
This is the ultimate proof of how much the law wants to avoid this outcome. Before things can become final, the Quran, in Surah An-Nisa, mandates intervention. Appoint an arbiter from his people and an arbiter from her people.
Akamin alihi wa akamin aliha. This isn't just a suggestion to go to counseling. This is a required legal step.
It's a compulsory intervention. 2 people, 1 from each family, are appointed. And their job isn't just to mediate. They are empowered to investigate the root of the problem and try to force a resolution. They act almost as agents of the court.
So the couple has to submit their relationship to this external review.
They do. And only if these 2 arbiters, these objective outsiders, determine that the conflict is truly, genuinely irreconcilable. Only then does the law reluctantly allow the final step. The entire process, the gradual steps, the waiting period, the witnesses, the arbitration, it's a legislative obstacle course designed to make sure this detested act remains a rare necessity.
What a journey. We started with this paradox, this most detested but permissible act. And the answer really seems to lie in this incredible balance between the divine ideal and, well, human reality.
It's a marvelous legislative equilibrium. At the end of the day, it's permitted, halal, because the law is merciful. It has to provide a necessary, humane exit from intractable suffering. It has to lift that harm.
But it's detested, abga halal, because the law wants to constantly emphasize the sacred gravity of what's being broken, that mithaq galez. The detestation is the ethical education. It's the social deterrent that guards against people taking it lightly.
It really is a system that combines wisdom with realism and mercy with responsibility. All those barriers we just talked about, they prove that the law isn't making divorce easy. It's making it difficult and responsible. It's making sure that bitter medicine is only ever used when the disease is truly terminal.
It's so much more powerful than just forbidding it. The law trusts people with the choice, but it weighs that choice down with immense moral and social gravity.
It educates the whole community on the sanctity of family while still providing a compassionate way out for those who truly need it. It's idealism and pragmatism hand in hand.
So we'll leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that builds on this whole paradox we've explored. What is the real lasting cultural impact when a highly detested right exists? Does declaring something permissible yet ethically repugnant create a stronger, more internalized social deterrent than just forbidding it outright? Just think about the psychological weight of choosing a legal path. It carries the label of being the most detested act in the eyes of the divine.